Now, the next pillar of the course is digitisation, and how people respond to change. And there's no doubt there's been huge change in working practices in the media, or so the media, in journalism, particularly news journalism, regional journalism certainly been affected, as has national news, and working practices have pretty much been transformed. But it's worth having a look at a couple of pieces of the theory in this case before we look at the responses of my interviewees, because they were quite interesting, really. Digitisation is supposed to be the great liberalisation, the great opening up of opportunity for things like freelance work. But my interviewees shed a bit of doubt on the opportunities for self-realisation or professional realisation that it presents. But just to look at a couple of diverging pieces of theory, Mark Juser in Media Work says, "It is through the daily interaction of creativity, commerce, content and connectivity that media practitioners give active meaning to their work and professional identity." A very sort of high-minded view of the internet era, you might say, looking at creativity, content, connectivity, and talking about meaning to the work. Interestingly, you could go all the way back to Marx and ideas of alienation of labour to provide the opposite view. Marx noted in the Communist Manifesto that the constant revolutionising of production, uninterrupted disturbance of all social conditions, everlasting uncertainty and agitation distinguished the bourgeois epoch from all earlier ones. That constant revolutionising of production is certainly what we've seen with the internet. He goes on poetically to say, "All that is solid melts into air, all that is holy is profaned." This anticipates, by a couple of hundred years, but it anticipates Caldwell, who says, "New technologies and changing economic conditions regularly unsettle long-standing craft conventions, job descriptions, and the very logic of the production chain itself." So on one side you've got Juser, the sort of the change-ready purveyor of the modern era, where words like content and connectivity are the watchwords, and on the other hand you've got the idea of being unsettled, and what Marx finally talks about as the work of proletarians losing its individual character due to use of machinery and the division of labour. He says, loses all charm for the workman. He becomes an appendage of the machine, and it is only the most simple, most monotonous, and most easily acquired knack that is required of him. So talking about this revolutionising of production leading to a less fulfilling working experience for the worker, or the proletarian as Marx would have it. Now, Emily, for her current one-year contract, went off to work for a regional news organisation, or the regional news arm of a national news organisation, and found it very unfulfilling. She said, "I think one of the byproducts of the digital era is that people don't have an attention span. We'd have to tell a whole story in the top 4 paragraphs." This was because the analytics that were available for her employers showed that people didn't scroll far enough down the pages. She said, "I thought I was going to a place where people really cared about in-depth stories. We only wrote 2 stories a day." She said the stories were only 250 words long, which she complained that you couldn't portray the issues in enough depth, and you couldn't portray barely enough space to portray both sides of a story, let alone to get into the issues. She said she spent the rest of her day after writing her 2 stories, writing her blog or going on Facebook. She said, "I found that really sad. It was not what I expected." Interestingly, if we went on to Ben, who's still at his regional paper, he has complained